Okay, I think it's about time I did another kind of limited budget cooking challenge thing. I'm using air quotes because the criteria are going to be a little bit different from the usual limited financial budget here. So yeah, I've got a different set of parameters for this one, and you might be wondering why I keep on tinkering and changing the rules and parameters. It's mainly to avoid making the same video over and over again. I'm trying to kind of tweak the rules to make it interesting, make it a bit varied and so on. Got a different idea this time. Rather than setting a fixed price for the total of the shopping, I'm just going to choose the cheapest thing I can find in each of 8 categories. So my 8 categories are fresh fruit. So I'm going to try and find the cheapest fresh fruit by weight. And if it's loose, I'm going to allow myself to buy a handful of it. If it's a pack less than 500 grams, I'll buy the pack. I'm excluding packs larger than 500 grams because I don't want to buy a bulk sack of apples or something like that. Leafy veg, in my experience of the shop I'm intending to go to, leafy vegetables are in pre-packs. So the cheapest pack or bag of leafy vegetables, green leafy vegetables. Cheapest non-leafy vegetable is going to be the same criteria as for fresh fruit. So cheapest by weight, and I'll have a handful or a pack of 500 grams or less. I should have said less than or equal to there. That's what I meant. A baked item. So a loaf of bread, a pack of muffins, the cheapest pack or single loose baked item I can find. Cheese or cheese product, the cheapest pack. Meat or fish, raw or cooked, just again, the cheapest pack I can find. Now, there isn't a deli counter or a butcher counter in the shop I'm intending to go to, so it's not a case of I can go and buy a thin slice of ham or anything like that. I've got to buy it in packs. Canned items, I'm just going to find the cheapest thing in a can in the whole shop. Food, obviously, not shoe polish. And glass jars, again, the cheapest thing I can find in a jar, so jam or sauce or pickles or something in a glass jar, the cheapest one they've got in the shop. Reduced items are going to be permitted because that can bring about additional randomness, but only if that reduction brings them to be the cheapest offering in that category. From the stuff I've got in the cupboard, I'm going to allow 1 spice, 1 sauce, 1 herb, which can be dried from the cupboard or fresh from the garden, and 1 tablespoon of oil or fat. I've got to make from this 3 different meals. And in this video, I'm going to do a cost analysis of each meal. I'll do a cost of the total ingredients that I use out of what I buy, assuming I don't use it all. And we'll look at the price of the total haul, of course. I'm not going to look at the cost of cooking or the time taken to cook or the full nutritional breakdown of the food in this video because you've got to draw the line somewhere. I want to make a video this week, not just sometime this month. So those are the parameters. Let's go shopping. I think it's going to be Lidl today. Right, well, that was the shopping, and that was really interesting. And I came across some pitfalls as well, but I'll talk about that in a minute. So here is the haul. Cheapest fresh fruit turned out to be a pomegranate. At least as far as I can tell, it was really difficult actually picking the cheapest fresh fruit because some of the fruit was sold priced by eaches, some of it was priced by weight, some of it was priced by pack. So you had packs of 5 bananas, you had limes each, and you had packs of 500 grams of apples or pears or whatever. I did my best. I'm not absolutely certain I did end up picking the thing, but I did as much diligence as I could do, and it turns out, I mean, there's quite a hefty pomegranate there for 75 pence. There were cheaper items. There were lemons, for example, that were cheaper than this, but like a third of this size and weight. So I think, on balance, I'm fairly sure that I picked one of the cheapest items. So anyway, a pomegranate for 75 pence. Green leafy vegetables, I thought it was going to be curly kale, chopped up in a bag, but they had these spring onions. They are a little bit worse for wear, but that's probably just the outer leaves. Those will peel off. Spring onions for 55 pence. Now, I'm not sure I would normally classify spring onions as green leafy veg, but they are undeniably green and leafy, and they were right in the middle of the green vegetable section, so I'm calling it. I think I might go and stand them in a glass of water in a minute just to stop them dying anymore. Vegetables, I had the same problem with as I did with fresh fruit. Some of it was priced by eaches, some of it was priced by pack, some of it was priced by weight. I had a rummage around. It looked for a moment like carrots or parsnips might be the cheapest by weight, but actually it turns out it was baking potatoes. I'm reasonably confident that baking potato, I wish I'd noticed that in the shop, that baking potatoes were the cheapest vegetable by weight. So I picked a handful of that, and here it is, 2 largish baking potatoes. I wish I'd noticed that damage in the shop, but anyway, we'll cut that out. So a couple of potatoes. Baked items. I looked at all the pre-packaged stuff. There were some cheapish things there. Crumpets, I think, were probably the cheapest pack of things. But the cheapest single baked item was this petit pain for 25 pence. So we got a little bit of bread. Cheese. Now, I expected that the cheapest cheese might be cheese strings or single slices, cheese food stuff. But it turned out to be this, mozzarella, 69 pence. So there's just a ball of mozzarella cheese in there. Meat. I picked up a pack of honey roast ham that I thought was going to be the cheapest item, but then when I went to look at the cheese, I noticed nestled in amongst the cheese was some pate. There were 2 choices of pate. There's Brussels pate and this Ardennes. I got the Ardennes pate because it's a course. It's got some texture to it. It's hopefully going to be a little bit nicer. This is 41% pork liver, 28% pork fat. I've had this before. Not a bad pate. Actually, that was 69 pence. Cheapest can. So the cheapest can in the store would have been spaghetti rings in tomato sauce, but they didn't have any. And so I had to go for the next cheapest can, which is rice pudding. So this is just water, milk, rice, sugar, basically. Only 8% rice in here, so it's going to be quite sloppy. Anyway, rice pudding was the cheapest can in the store. And the cheapest jar was tricky because it was all over the place, because there was the jam aisle, there was all the sauces and pickles and ingredient type of things like smoked peppers, and then curry sauces and pasta sauces and so on. However, the cheapest thing I could find was this jar of tartar sauce for 59 pence. There was a choice between this or horseradish sauce in the same fixture, both priced 59 pence, and I thought that probably tartar sauce is a little bit more versatile than horseradish in the context of the other things which I'd already bought. So there we go. That is the haul. And from that, I've got to make 3 meals. I think there's some potential there, actually. It's an interesting haul, and it's quite different to what I kind of expected to get, and hopefully a little bit different from what we've had before on some of these videos, where it always ends up being carrots and bananas and baked beans. So anyway, that's what we've got. Tomorrow, we've got to make that into 3 meals. Right, now breakfast is not going to be very elaborate at all. It's going to be some of this pomegranate and some of this rice pudding. I'm allowed 1 spice, 1 herb and 1 sauce. I was thinking maybe cinnamon. Seems an obvious choice with fruit and rice. But I'm going to use nutmeg, I think. To simplify things later on, I'm going to take all of the little fruitlets, what are they, jewels, out of this pomegranate. Now I know there are weird and wonderful ways to do this. I've seen kind of Instagram reels where people cut diagonal whatnot and get the pieces out that way, but I think it's probably just as easy to do this. Okay, I'm going to get the rest of this pomegranate out of the shell. I'm going to do that all because then I've got this just as an ingredient set aside. So, not the most vibrant red pomegranate I've ever seen. I don't know if that's maybe because I don't know if these things get picked underripe and shipped here, or if it's just the variety. Anyway, I'm going to put that in a box so we can save it in the fridge, and we'll use some of that in a different thing later in the day if I can think of how to use it. Anyway, I'm going to have some of that with my rice pudding. And I am going to warm this up. And also, I don't think I want a full can of this for breakfast. So, let's see what we get. It looks all right. Yeah, I think I probably only want half a can of that for breakfast. So the other half can, we'll just put in a container that can go in the fridge. There wouldn't be any harm just putting some cling film over that can and storing it in the fridge for today. I know a lot of people worry about putting metal cans in the fridge. Most of that advice is out of date. And it also doesn't really matter if it's 24 hours. Anyway, just going to warm that up on the stove. Warm rice pudding. Now, it is essentially just rice porridge made with milk. And rice porridge is something eaten in a lot of places in the world. Anyway, just have a little bit of that pomegranate in there. Maybe a little bit more of that pomegranate in there. And some of the juice. And a little dusting of nutmeg. What is it like? Well, I'm happy with the combination of nutmeg and pomegranate. Those two things complement each other very nicely. The rice pudding, I'm just going to taste a bit of this rice pudding with nothing else. It is very, very runny rice pudding, but it does taste nice and creamy and sweet. It also has a nice little caramel note to it as well. That will certainly do for breakfast. So not a great deal of effort involved in putting that together. Barely qualifies as cooking, but that's not a bad thing for breakfast. It's actually pretty good. Okay, I want to do a little bit of prep ahead of time here, so I'm going to bake these potatoes and cook parts of these onions and toast this bread all in one process in the oven. Yeah, one of these potatoes has got a bit I need to cut out. Hopefully that doesn't go too deep. Yeah, it's fine. In addition to washing and drying, I'm just going to give them a little stab here and there, just so they don't go boom. So those two just on a tray straight in the oven, probably for about an hour. It'd be a shame to put the oven on for just 2 potatoes. So I'm going to do a couple of other bits too. I'm just going to prepare these spring onions. So yeah, there's just a few slimy dead leaves to pull off. There are a few dead bits on the end to trim off and so on. Right, spring onions are all trimmed up. Did actually lose a fair bit of that there. There was quite a lot of withered and nasty little bits, and anyway, it is what it is. I'm going to cut those about there to divide that into kind of mostly green bits and mostly white bits. These bits here, I'm going to put a little bit of oil on them and just bake them in the oven. These bits I'll save. I'm not even going to chop these up yet because they might wilt. And I've got one more thing that needs to go in the oven, which is going to be this bread roll. Now, I bought this yesterday, so by now it's actually a little bit stale, but that's perfect for what I want. I'm going to slice it into quite thin rounds if I can. So that's maybe, what's that, 6 millimeters, something like that. Perfect. Now, in my allowance from the kitchen, I've got 1 tablespoonful of oil, and that's going to be olive oil. There we go, 1 tablespoonful. Just leave that on there so it can drain. Okay, I should take that off for a moment. Because I'm going to spread this oil around. Now I could brush this oil around, but I've only got this 1 tablespoonful. So I don't want to waste any of it by coating the brush. So something like that. And then these slices of bread, just going to pick up a bit of oil on them like that. Try and do that as evenly as I can. Okay. And then the onions, I'm just going to roll them around a little bit in this end here to give them a light coating. Right, I'll preheat the oven and we're going to get the potatoes, onions and bread in there. The potatoes will take longer than this stuff will. I'm not even going to waste these breadcrumbs here either. Right, these bits have had about 15 minutes. And I think those are done as crisp as I want. I think if I try and take them any further, it's going to be like eating bricks. So there's my olive oil toasts. Not seasoned, but that's okay. The pate that's going to go on them is quite highly seasoned. These two ends I'm going to save to make some breadcrumbs. So these onions, I'd say those are as done as they need to be, really. So I'm just going to leave them there to cool. Right, there is one more bit of prep I want to get ahead on, and that is to convert this mozzarella, which at the moment is a ball of fresh mozzarella. I want to convert this into low moisture mozzarella. My thanks to Andon from the channel My Name is Andon on YouTube for the method on how to do this. This is where I discovered it, on his excellent pizza video, which I'll link to in the video description and in this card. I just need to gently cook this mozzarella, to cook some of the moisture out of it, to turn it into low moisture mozzarella, which is the kind of mozzarella that you would grate onto a pizza. I'm not making pizza today, obviously. So in a non-stick pan, I'm just going to smash the mozzarella and then put that over a low heat. Actually, do you know what? First, I'm just going to steal a little bit of it because I might keep a little bit of it fresh. This very gentle heating is just cooking some of the moisture out of this mozzarella. It will melt down a little bit as well, which is exactly what we want. So that's the cheese. It's all completely melted now. I think we're there. So that took only a few minutes. But we can see, well, the volume has reduced down quite a bit. But all of that liquid has come out. So my now lower moisture mozzarella is going to go in there, in that dish to cool down. And all of that milky liquid that came out, just going to go in that little pot there. And I'll figure out something to do with that as well. Now you may have noticed there's no salt on my allowances today, and that is an accident. I just forgot to include it when I was starting the video, but we're going to run with it. Because there is a little bit of salt in this cheese and there's some in the pate, so I'm sure we can adapt. Anyway, I'm just going to taste this so I can figure out what to do with it. So yeah, that's like salty, buttery milk. And same deal with this brine that it was packed in. Just going to taste a tiny bit of that. Interestingly less salty. Also has quite a creamy taste. So some ideas will come from that, certainly. Now, I do later on want some breadcrumbs. I'm going to make these little ends of bread into breadcrumbs. I could do that in the food processor, but I kind of feel like I'd probably lose 50% of it coating the inside of the machine. So I'm just going to grate it, and hopefully that will work. Hopefully I won't lose it to the grater or a finger. Well, that seemed to work. Yet another little box, but this one won't go in the fridge. Okay, potatoes have had the full hour, and I would say they're done. Just let them stand there and cool for probably 20 minutes before I try to do anything with them. Time has elapsed, and these potatoes are now cool enough to safely handle. So I'm going to carefully cut them in half, and then even more carefully scoop out most of the potato. So as you might have guessed, I am later going to make some kind of loaded potato skins, but I'm also going to use this potato that's coming out of here. Now it is going to seem today like dishes are very onion and potato based, but that's the ingredients we have. So that's the ingredients we're going to be using. Fair old bit of potato to come out of these skins. That's good, because we've got to make 2 meals out of what we've got left. So the potato skins will just go back in this tray for a moment. And we'll set those aside, because it is now nearly lunchtime. And so I've got to start putting lunch together. So for lunch, just going to chop up the green parts of those spring onions. I've still got those bits to use. So I'm going to make a potato salad. And to dress my potato salad, I've got this tartar sauce. But I am going to have a little taste of this first, just in case it's really sour or something. Which is good. Tartar sauce is basically mayonnaise with capers and gherkins, pickled cucumbers chopped up in it, cornichons probably. And, I mean, this is going to be some cheap version of that. But perfect dressing for potato salad. So let's go to town on that, I think. Now, the reason I put that in there first is because this potato is very well cooked. And I want to preserve the chunks of potato if I can. So we'll just mix the dressing first, and then I can do minimal stirring once I've put the chunks of still slightly warm potato in there. And I'm going to use about half of this potato, because I have a plan for the other half. And very carefully just dress that like that. And there we go. Warm potato salad with spring onions. Now, you may recall in the parameters we are allowed 1 herb, 1 spice and 1 sauce. My spice was nutmeg, which I had with breakfast. My herb is going to be fresh parsley, which I've got from the garden. Still fresh and green out there, despite the frost. And most of that is going to go into my potato salad. And again, just give that a little gentle stir, just to get that mixed in. So I'm going to plate up some lunch now. Let's have a look at this pate. There we go. I mean, it's just a liver pate. And I think we can probably have about, let's go for about 1/3 of that. See if I can get it out in a nice, relatively pretty chunk. We've got these lovely crisp toasts here. Let's just try a little bit harder on the presentation of that pate. So I'll cut slices of it. I think that does look a little bit better. Got this nice potato salad. And then the parsley over those bits there. So just for a bit of extra colour and kind of accent, some pomegranate jewels on top of the pate. So let's get that to the table and give it a taste. All right then. So, well, I think potato salad first is potato salad. Undeniably, that tartar sauce has exactly the right profile for dressing for potato salad. And yes, it's only improved by the addition of the spring onions and the parsley. That's really good. I would make that again. And the pate, of course, I had no hand in making the pate, so can't really take credit for the flavour of this. But anyway, pate on olive oil toasts. Here comes the crunch. So these are delightfully crisp. Does pate go with pomegranate? Yes, it does. That's really good. That is a great combination. This is a nice lunch. Right, that was not a bad lunch at all. And now I want to just get a head start on dinner. So I'm going to make the filling for these potato skins. And what we've got to fill that is we've got some pate, we've got some cooked onions. Well, we'll see what else we've got. But to start with, I'm going to take these pieces of cooked spring onion and just chop them into chunks. Now we need to make enough filling for 4 potatoes, which could be tricky. And do you know what? I might as well just put in the rest of that pate. Okay, well, you know, this could be interesting, you know, or disgusting. Now I've got in my allowance from the kitchen, 1 herb, 1 spice, 1 sauce. I've used my herb and spice. I'm going to line these with a bit of sauce before I put the filling in. And my sauce is going to be gochujang. But Mr. Shrimp, that's not a sauce. You cheated. Okay. Well, we'll make a sauce. I think gochujang probably is a sauce. It's a condiment. Fermented chili. So anyway, there we go, gochujang. And we'll make that into a sauce by finely chopping some onions. And some pomegranate juice. There we go. Spicy gochujang and pomegranate and onion sauce. Little taste. Yeah, that is good. So my potato skins are going to get a little spoonful of that in the bottom. And, oh, I made a mess there. Spread it right up the sides. And that's just going to be a little spicy surprise underneath the filling. And then each one of these is going to get a little, well, actually a big quenelle of pate and onion. I've never cooked pate like this before, so I have no idea really what's going to happen here. I imagine it's going to melt a bit because it's quite high in fat. I think I'll just press that down into those potatoes. And then the low moisture mozzarella is now like a piece of rubber. Amazing. And tempting though it is to try and grate this directly onto there, I think half of it would miss and go on the tray. So I'm going to grate this back into its own dish. Do you know what? I might have gone a little bit far with the extraction of moisture there. It's not grating tremendously easily. So what I might do here is actually just shred that up with a knife. Some of this cheese on top of each one. Hopefully enough. Just enough. I will also just add my breadcrumbs here. I think I maybe should have mixed those with the cheese. Never mind. So anyway, that's the main part of dinner, ready to go, except it's nowhere near dinner time. So I'm just going to cover that up and we'll put that in the fridge and straight in the oven when it's time. Okay, well, it's getting on for dinner time. So potato skins just into a preheated oven there until such time as they bubble and melt. I don't know, it should be about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. Meanwhile, there is time for a bonus dish. So kind of a starter, I suppose, for dinner. And this is going to be really quick to rustle up, actually. So I've just got this bit of potato. That's all of the potato used now. We've got this creamy liquid that came out of the cheese when I converted it into low moisture mozzarella. Look how creamy that is. And we've got the liquid that the cheese was packed in. Now, I'm not going to use all of this because I think this is probably quite salty. So I'm going to use it to rinse out that creamy stuff out of there. And just a bit of tap water. I'm just going to blend that together using the stick blender. Into a pan, and we'll just put a little bit of gentle heat underneath that. And while that's just warming up, I also still have some green onions left. Just a few little bits of the green parts of the spring onion. I actually still have some left, so I'll just stir those into there and just bring that to heat. Those need hardly any cooking at all, so I'm just going to make sure that that's hot. And so what we should have here is something kind of similar to leek and potato soup. Of course, it's not leeks, but spring onions are quite closely similar. And then just as a kind of little garnish on that soup, I've got that mozzarella that I didn't cook into the top of the soup there, and that will just melt. And a few more little bits of spring onion. And I did save from lunch, because I had a plan to do this, one little round of toast. So let's give this a try. Just the soup first. Just tastes like liquid potato soup, actually. It's really earthy. Yeah, that's good. And just the right level of kind of accidental seasoning from the salt that was in the whey that cooked out of the cheese. And then together with the cheese, oh, it's gone kind of squeaky. That's actually really good. It's kind of like squeaky cheese curds. I suppose that's what it is. And yeah, that makes good croutons. Well, there we go. Nice little starter there. Potato and onion soup. Yeah, really good. Now I want to make a kind of relish to go with my potato skins. So there is my last little bit of onion. That means I will have eaten a whole bunch of spring onions today, as well as a whole pack of pate. Well, that could be challenging on the digestive system. But I need something to go with these potato skins. I think they're going to be quite tasty on their own because they've got the gochujang in there. They've got pate and onions and cheese and everything else. But I feel like they need something else on the plate with them. So I'm going to make a weird relish. And it might be good or it might be terrible. I'm going to just throw some of the things I've got left together and see what happens. So I've got some onion chopped. I've got some tartar sauce left. Now, I think anyone could reasonably predict tartar sauce and onion is going to be quite nice together. But I think it might be a bit tangy, a bit sour. So, well, we've got pomegranate left. So for a bit of sweetness, we're going to weird it up with some pomegranate. Well, let's give that a little taste. Can't imagine this is going to be anything but strange. Actually, that's surprisingly good. Yeah, it is still a bit tangy. So just to balance that, I think we will have most of the rest of that pomegranate in there. So it's more of a pomegranate relish than anything else. Well, there we go. I mean, if it needed some sweetness, I've got rice pudding I could put in there. Should I put some rice pudding in there? We don't know. I think rather than ruin the batch, we will conduct that experiment in a separate vessel. So, yeah, what happens if you just mix the things you've got left? Well, down the hatch. No. I mean, it's all right. I mean, it is okay, but I don't think it's necessary. So I'll save that bit of rice pudding for my breakfast tomorrow. Or maybe dessert. Right, those I think are done. They haven't gone quite as bubbly and melty as I thought they would, but maybe that's my fault for kind of reducing the moisture in that mozzarella just a bit too much. Anyway, they smell amazing. So it's time to get those out and plate them up. Okay, and there's my weird relish, which I think we just pretty up with a little bit more of that on the top. So that's dinner. Now it is almost like I've had two starters here, because these loaded potato skins, very often you get this as a starter, although I think you probably only get maybe one or two of them, and maybe smaller than that as well. So I think we call this a main course starter. These are going to be desperately hot at the moment. I'm not going to just bite straight into one of these. I think I'll leave these to stand for maybe 5-10 minutes. Well, here we go. Weird loaded potato skins. Hopefully cool enough to eat now. I'm going to chop one in half so we can have a look at so we can kind of inspect a cross section. So there we go. Meaty in the middle. You can't see where the gochujang has gone, but it's in there somewhere. Cheesy and crispy breadcrumbs on top. That's still too hot. So I'm going to cut. I wouldn't normally eat a dish like this with a knife and fork. This is more kind of pick up and bite, but I know what will happen if I do that right now. I should probably be patient. Well, weirdly, you wouldn't know that was pate. I suppose you'd know it was liver because it's quite a distinctive flavour. But if somebody had served me this, I wouldn't have guessed that they'd actually just put pate in it. I think I'd have guessed that they cooked some liver, chopped it up and put that in there. So it's kind of reverted more back to its ingredient form than its pate form, if that makes any sense. And that's a good thing, obviously. So, what about in combination with this relish? Well, surprisingly, that works. This relish really just tastes a bit like coleslaw or something. And I suppose that is because the tartar sauce is the dominant flavour in it. Okay, right, let's be brutal here. I think a different meat would be better in that filling. I mean, chicken livers I think would work in there. If it was chicken liver and it was just cooked as whole pieces of chicken liver, I think that would be nicer. I think another meat like ham or bacon, even little bits of sausage would probably work in there. The pate kind of works, but I think the problem is the texture or lack thereof. Maybe if I had more bread, I could have incorporated breadcrumbs into the stuffing, and that might have made all the difference. The gochujang coating on the inside is really good and does work in this context. The relish, I could kind of take it or leave it. There's enough flavour in these on their own. From the gochujang sauce, from all the other things, there's enough flavour in here to carry itself. Okay, well, I think it's time to go back to Studio Shrimp now. Okay, Studio Shrimp here. Just some quick reflection on this whole exercise. Firstly, lessons learned. Apart from the lesson I should have learned already, which is that some scenes you just can't reshoot if you set the camera out of focus. Firstly, pomegranate goes with everything, apparently. Second, it's more difficult than I thought to absolutely determine which fruit or vegetables are the best value for money in a supermarket that uses a combination of weights, eaches and packs for pricing. I suppose I could have spent a few hours there with a notepad and calculator and used the in-store scales to determine the typical weights of the things not explicitly sold by weight, but my dedication to the art does not stretch that far, sorry to disappoint. And thirdly, pate is best enjoyed in the form it is supplied, not as an ingredient in cooking. I don't think that's exactly a surprise, but until you know that, you don't know it. So, scoring of the dishes. Breakfast, rice pudding with pomegranate jewels. Perfectly nice, but I think I can only score this 5 out of 10 because there was not really much culinary art in it, except I suppose the selection of nutmeg to go with the rice and fruit, but I think that's kind of an obvious choice. Lunch, I'm going to give this one 7 out of 10. Again, it might have scored higher if I felt I'd done anything rather than just assemble pate onto toast, which is what you're supposed to do with it. Scoring the potato salad on its own, I'm going to give 8 out of 10 for that element. It was a really enjoyable potato salad. Dinner, the potato and onion soup starter is going to get 8 out of 10 because for all its simplicity, it was really delicious. You might not think of potatoes as being something particularly flavourful, but the earthy nuttiness of the humble spud really shone through in that soup, and the squeaky cheese on top was just wonderful. The stuffed potato skins I think will get 6 out of 10. The concept itself is good, just not with this exact combination of ingredients. Pate as an ingredient in a cooked dish isn't horrible, but it isn't superb either. It's what I had though, so there it is. The gochujang sauce in there was a really good touch, and I think these potato skins need to be revisited in a recipe redemption video where I will make them again, but without any restrictions on ingredients or budget. Reflections on setting these kind of parameters for the challenge. I think it yielded a far more interesting selection of ingredients than I would have had if it was a simple spend limit, so I think that part was good. It might be interesting to try this again for a different shop, as the cheapest items in category might be different somewhere else, and I suppose there are probably unexplored categories that could be switched in, such as packets, frozen food, dried pulses and snacks, for example. Anyway, I hope this has been interesting, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.